The corridor dissolved into a kaleidoscope of warning lights and plasma fire, the air singing with the lethal humidity of vaporized metal. Elias wasn't the soft-spoken diplomat Alara had married 3 months ago. He was a blurred kinetic event, a whirlwind of ballistics and blade that moved faster than her Aethori eyes could track. He shoved Alara behind a reinforced bulkhead, his hand lingering on her waist for a microsecond, a grounding anchor in the storm before he turned back to the oncoming horde. 3 minutes, Alara, he shouted over the scream of tearing Durasteel, leveling a heavy kinetic rifle with one hand. Get to the pod. I have to blow the seal. She froze, her heart hammering against her ribs, not from fear, but from a sudden, blinding revelation. She thought he was a political pawn. He was the board's deadliest piece. But before the fire and the blood, there had been only the cold, sterile grandeur of the ceremony. The marriage had been a strategic concession, a dull chapter in a long science fiction story regarding interstellar trade rights. The Aethori Empire needed the raw resource output of the Terran Federation, and in exchange, the Galactic Council demanded a union to bind the treaty. Alara stood tall in her ceremonial armor, looking down at Elias Thorne. To her eyes, he looked breakable. Humans were soft-skinned, lacking natural plating, venom, or claws. He was a death worlder, yes, but one that seemed to rely entirely on machines to compensate for biological frailty. Peace is bought with a ring, survival is bought with blood, she had told her father, resigning herself to a life protecting a fragile husband who likely couldn't lift a standard Aethori combat blade. The illusion shattered 48 hours after their arrival on Station Aegis. The xenophage didn't care about diplomatic immunity or treaties. The swarm hit the promenade first, tearing through the blast doors like wet paper. Alara drew her pulse sword, stepping in front of Elias, her instinct screaming to shield him from the carnage. "Stay down," she commanded, her voice cutting through the panic as the civilians scattered. But Elias didn't stay down. As the first xenophage drone, a chitinous nightmare twice the size of the brute mercenaries often called Space Orcs, lunged, the air shifted. Elias moved with a fluidity that defied his physiology. He didn't run away. He slid under the creature's guard. There was a sickening crunch, a flash of steel, and the drone collapsed, its neural stem severed with surgical precision. Alara blinked, her pulse thundering in her ears. The man standing over the corpse held a combat knife with a reverse grip, his posture relaxed yet coiled. This was the terrifying reality of human ingenuity, paired with violence. This was the true Terran spirit stripped of its polite veneer. The fragile diplomat was gone, replaced by a man who breathed combat. He looked at her, eyes scanning her for injuries, and the intensity of his gaze burned hotter than the plasma scoring the walls. It was a look of absolute possession and fierce protection. "We need to move, Princess," he said, his voice dropping an octave into pure command. "My team is waking up." In that moment, watching him reload a scavenged pistol with practiced ease, she realized the truth. She wasn't guarding him. He was the apex predator in the room, and for the first time in their arrangement, the sci-fi politics faded away, leaving only the heat of the man beside her. The only thing sharper than Aethori pride is a phantom's blade, and she had just seen it drawn. Omega Actual, initiate core overload. 10 seconds. Elias's voice was calm, a stark contrast to the chaotic symphony of war erupting around them. The blast doors groaned, metal shrieking as the xenophage horde threw its collective weight against the alloy. Elias didn't flinch. He strapped Alara into the escape pod's crash seat, his fingers brushing the nape of her neck, a touch that sent a jolt of heat through her, grounding her amidst the madness. 10 seconds. Alara gasped, her chest heaving. "That's suicide." "That's humanity," Elias corrected, flashing a grin that was all sharp edges and reckless courage. "We don't just hold the line, Alara. We end the threat." He slammed his hand onto the launch lever just as the blast doors buckled. The launch was violent. Gravity crushed the air from Alara's lungs as the pod screamed away from Station Aegis. Through the reinforced viewport, She watched the station, a crowning jewel of the Galactic Council, shrink against the velvet backdrop of space. Then it vanished. A sphere of pure, blinding white light replaced the steel, expanding in a silent, terrifying blossom of nuclear fire. The railing the pod's frame. Alara gripped Elias's forearm, feeling the steel cord muscle beneath his flight suit. He didn't look at the explosion. He was looking at her. The Deathworlder intensity in his eyes hadn't faded, but the combat stims were wearing off, leaving behind a raw, unmasked vulnerability. "You destroyed a fortress," she whispered, the realization settling heavy in her mind. The sheer scale of human ingenuity applied to destruction was terrifying. The Aethori studied war as an art form. Terrans practiced it as a finality. "The Council will demand answers." "Let them," Elias murmured, unbuckling his restraints to lean closer. The cabin was small, forcing their knees to touch, the air charged with the electric aftermath of near death. "I told him I'd keep you safe." "I keep my promises." Alara looked at him, really looked at him. The fragile man she had married was a myth. In his place sat a warrior who had baited an apex swarm into a nuclear grave without blinking. This was the essence of HFY legends she had dismissed as propaganda, the indomitable Terran spirit that refused to break, even when the odds were mathematical impossibilities. She reached out, tracing the scar running along his jawline. His skin was warm, alive. The fear of the xenophage was gone, replaced by a different kind of heart-pounding sensation. "My father called this union a shield," Alara said softly, her thumb brushing his lip. "He was wrong. It's a sword." Elias caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. The gesture was tender, a startling counterpoint to the violence he had just orchestrated. "Is that a problem, Princess?" "No," she breathed, pulling him down until their foreheads rested together, the adrenaline fading into a simmering, magnetic pull. "It's exactly what the Empire needs." The sci-fi nightmare of the invasion had ended in fire, but something stronger had been forged in the cooling embers. They were no longer just political allies or strangers sharing a bed. They were survivors, partners, lethal and loyal. As the rescue beacon pinged in the darkness, cutting through the void with a rhythmic pulse of hope, Alara smiled. The universe thought it had seen the last of the Space Orcs' brutality or the Aethori's elegance. It had never seen them combined. "Let's go home, Elias. Copy that," he whispered, and finally he kissed her, a collision of relief and promise that burned brighter than any star.